The church on Park Avenue smelled like wax and old cedar, a scent that made everything feel inevitable. We buried my mother at noon. By 2, I was in the library she loved, surrounded by ledgers bound in cracked calfskin and photographs of ships my grandfather swore could smell a storm 2 days before it arrived. I'm Eva Holt, 40 years old, Chief Financial Officer of Holt Marine Logistics, usually the smallest woman in any room, and, on paper, the most dangerous. My mother wrote anything that mattered in blue fountain pen. I use a calculator with a chipped 7 key and a spine that doesn't bow to men who call my work support. On the desk, beside a brass marine chronometer wound and ticking since before I was born, lay an envelope edged in blue. Inside, a single page, her slanted salt, sure script. For Ava, read only if you choose the company over the family. There is a clause inside the trust. Look for the blue ink. Use the night. If you hear the chronometer louder than your heart, you're running out of time. The tick became louder, like a metronome pushing a piece forward. The chest set by the window was missing a night. In the glass, I saw my brother Leo's reflection before he spoke. Rumpled wool, airport air, eyes that had learned to laugh and forget. "You got one too?" he asked, holding a plain envelope that meant nothing. "No," I said, "just Mom." He smiled without humor. "Then you already know this is going to be ugly." The chronometer ticked. I broke the blue seal and felt the first edge of a cliff I couldn't back away from. We gathered for the will in the teak and oil boardroom, where the floor hums from the server racks below and the air tastes faintly of varnish and salt. Under a painting of our first freighter punching through gray water like an opinion, my sister Margot twisted her wedding band. Leo drummed the table. Calder, our general counsel, and my fiancé polished his glasses for the 5th time. "Permis." Holt's instructions, the attorney read. "Control rests with the family trust. Interim chairmanship shall be offered to Ava only upon a unanimous vote of the 3 heirs within 30 days of death." Margot's voice stayed soft, but her eyes turned sharp. "And if we don't agree?" "Then control moves to the named trust protector." "Named who?" Leo scoffed. "Since when is that a job here?" The attorney slid a page across the table. The ink was blue. The name was sealed for later. He looked at me as if my mother had left the rest to my math. 30 days. Unanimous or nothing. And a stranger holding our keel if we failed. I leaned in. "What about the $480 million balloon payment on the fleet refinance due in 14 days? Silence, a cough, and then Leo. "We have options." The cash burn dashboard in my head said otherwise. When the meeting broke, Calder caught my sleeve. Coffee and caution on his breath. He showed me wire logs. 3.2 million, leaving our operating account to 7 Point Capital, a private equity firm famous for turning companies into sale-leaseback ghosts. "What is that?" "An arrangement Leo signed while you planned the funeral." Blue ink blurred. Leo slipped out like a man who preferred hallways to consequences. Rotterdam smelled like damp steel and engine oil and fries from a canteen 2 blocks away. From my mother's desk overlooking the dry dock ships, squat as sleeping whales, I lifted the blotter and found a brittle envelope with my name in blue. "You will be offered bridge loans that feel like oxygen and taste like debt. You will be told selling ships is asset light. Your brother will call it modern. Your sister will call it merciful. The knight moves in L shapes. Use it." I took the small brass knight from my pocket, its head polished by her thumb, and set it where it didn't rock. My phone buzzed. Term sheet attached. Excited to partner. Signature, Leo Holt. Success fees for 7 Point, covenants that would force us to flagships in cheaper jurisdictions, and one clause that made my teeth ache. Change of control triggers a cash sweep if the trust protector took over. They could strip us clean. I called Leo. He picked up, breathless, like running or lying. "It's a bridge, Alva. We need the balloon covered. At what cost?" "We'll refinance later." "With what collateral?" "Alva, where are you?" 7 Point's Midtown office, he said, with Dane Valletta. Of course. The man who smiles like a blade. Don't sign. I already did, he said, and hung up. The chronometer in my head turned from tick to countdown. If Leo was selling the ships out from under us, my only move was a knight's move. Sideways, then forward. We had a skunkworks project buried in RD Holt Atlas, a logistics software that cut port idle time by 14% and saved fuel like it had a conscience. I hid its budget under dockside Wi-Fi and sensor calibration. My mother signed every line in blue without asking. She recognized a hedge when she saw one. In the ship model room, oak cases, brass plaques, an oil painting that always smelled like a lemon wiped across it. I laid the Atlas deck on the table. Leo signed sale-leasebacks, I said to Calder and Margot. Covenants that would hollow us out. We can pay the balloon without selling steel. How? Sell 20% of the Atlas spinout to a sovereign fund. Cash for the balloon and retrofits. No board seat. No hands on our hulls. Leo walked in, blue tie, red eyes. We need certainty, not your pet code base. Atlas cut dwell time at Antwerp 19% last quarter. Certainty is results. He laughed without teeth. The market values steel, Ava. Then we sell them brains. Draw an emergency resolution to freeze asset sales 72 hours, I told Calder. I'll fly to Abu Dhabi tonight. Margot folded her arms. What about the will? Unanimous vote. 30 days? We can barely decide lunch. We buy time and decide with cash on the table. The chronometer ticked on the credenza. Leo stared at it instead of me. He left without slamming the door, his version of compromise. Book the Gulfstream, I said. Our assistant hesitated. Calder lifted a blue pen and signed the authorization. I had a plan, a clock, and a night. I did not have loyalty where I needed it most. At 1 a.m., an anonymous email arrived. A photo of Calder on 7 Points yacht with Dane, time-stamped last week. The picture glowed on my laptop like a wound held underwater. When Calder called, I asked the only question that mattered. Are you going to tell me your shoes leave scuffs on other people's decks? His silence was too careful. I went to hear him out, he said, to moderate. Did you tell him about Atlas? No. About the trust protector? Of course not. Then what did you trade? My voice was even. That scared me. You're exhausted, he said softly. Let's talk when... Bring all your blue pens, I said, and hung up. Dawn smelled like someone else's cologne in the plane, and dustless air in the conference room at Adic Glass, climate control, coffee in silver urns, tall enough to baptize mistakes. I pitched Atlas like it could save their Sundays. Fuel burn curves, port turnarounds, the green line that didn't just hug the efficient frontier, it rode it. 20% of the spin-out for cash to clear the balloon and build retrofits. No seat, only a royalty. Blue ink contracts clean enough to eat off. The director's fingertips slid beneath the deck edge, checking for splinters. Why not sell ships? Ships are the body, I said. Atlas is the brain. You can change a brain faster. He glanced at use of proceeds and gave a handshake that said verify and then yes. Diligence in 4 hours. I texted Margot. We have a live one. Tell Leo to hold. He won't pick up, she replied. He's with Dane. I pocketed my phone, caught my reflection. A woman who hadn't slept in 2 days, standing straight anyway. Calder texted as I boarded. Emergency! Trust, protector revealed. Board at 8. You won't like it. The boardroom felt colder than usual, the building withholding heat like judgment. Leo was tight-jawed. Margot held herself as if her blouse had hands. Dane wore navy the way wolves wear fur. Calder hovered, not sitting. The trust protector walked in on small, determined feet. Mrs. Almeida, I said before I could swallow it. My mother's secretary of 3 decades. She had made me cocoa when a ship model fell on my foot. She kept the birthday list, the ports list, the list of lists. She set a thin folder on the teak, unsnapped it, and filled the room with the lavender of her soap. Your mother anticipated discord, she said. 2 conditions must be enforced before control can move outside the family. She slid a letter to me. Blue ink. My name. If you choose the company over the family, choose the family inside the company. Condition 1. Commit 5% of net to a Seafarers Safety Foundation in perpetuity. Condition 2. Keep 60% of tonnage under domestic flag. If the heirs cannot agree to both, I instruct the protector to grant control to a steward who will. Monsieur Holt. Dane laughed softly. Philanthropy as poison pill. Not poison, Mrs. Almeida said. Policy. We can't afford 5%, Leo said. We can barely afford lunch. We can with Atlas, I said. Dane turned to Calder. Only if the spinout isn't entangled in old covenants, he purred. We believe it is. Calder's face winced, a mist filing flashing behind his eyes. Mrs. Almeida's gaze flicked to the brass knight I'd set on the table without noticing. Your mother trusted you to find a way that isn't a straight line, she said. Give me 7 days, I told them. Freeze asset sales, close Atlas, fund the foundation, keep our flag. You have 72 hours by my clock, Mrs. Almeida answered. You may call it 7 in your head if it helps. The chronometer ticked like a judge drumming fingers. That afternoon, 7 Point filed an injunction to stop us from diverting assets into Atlas. Hearing in 36 hours. Courtrooms smell like toner and old carpet and other people's futures. Dane tried to stroke the judge's ego with precedent. Opposing counsel jabbed at a misfiled notice. I waited. It wasn't my turn that saved us. It was Mrs. Almeida's. She rose from the back like a pocket knife opening. Your Honor, the trust gives me authority to enforce conditions that predate this gentleman's term sheet. The software is a tool to meet those conditions. If you block it, you block compliance with the trust itself. Judge Portman, a woman whose robe looked like spare skin, considered and gave us what we needed. 72 hours of oxygen. No ship sales, no transfer of core assets. The software could be marketed for capital infusion to pay imminent obligations and fund the trust conditions. Outside, air tasted like a dock at dawn. In the engine hall, our training facility, where cadets learn the smell of hot metal and the music of torque. I found Leo beside a piston array, eyes red, hands black with grease as if he'd leaned on the machine to stay upright. Do you remember this? I asked. When we were 8 and 12? You said it smelled like coins and rain. You said it smelled like God, he said, a mouthless smile. Don't sell it for sweaters and term sheets, I said. He put both palms on the casing. If you close Atlas in time, if you fund the foundation, I'll vote yes. Unanimous? If Margot does, he said. Maybe this is the family she wanted. Cooling metal ticked along with the chronometer in my head. At midnight, Attic wanted port-level emissions data we hadn't compiled. Conditional on close. I called Greta in operations, who keeps half the Western Hemisphere compliant by willpower and a color-coded spreadsheet. I need 3 years of emissions by dawn. You need a time machine, she said. Or a friend who owes us, I answered. She rang Meersen Yard in Rotterdam. By 2 a.m., Dutch techs who spoke JSON like gossip-scraped sensor logs, pulled AIS tracks, overlaid weather. At 4, Atlas ingested the mess and found a song. At 5, a dashboard even I wanted to frame. At 6, Attic wrote, conditional satisfied, term sheet approved. Close by Friday, 1700, the balloon was due at 23:59. 6 hours, 2 signatures, 1 vote. I sent docs to Calder for final review. No reply. Voicemail. At noon, Margot called from the river, wind in her mic. I've been reading Mom's letters, blue, everywhere. Set up the foundation in my name. I'll run it. And I'll vote yes. The word unanimous tasted like brass and honey. We still needed Calder's signature to close. His office was empty. Conference rooms, empty. The receptionist's eyes were too wide. He's at 7 Point. I rode the elevator down, and my fear up. Madison smelled like exhaust and decisions. Calder sat in Dane's glass conference room, a blue pen in his hand. Don't, I said from the doorway. Shame and defense tugged his face. If we agree to a convertible on Atlas, you're trading their leash for our wind. It buys peace. It buys control for them. His whisper was raw. Your way is risk. I'm tired of waking at 3 to hear you breathe like the chronometer is inside your lungs. Then marry someone who sleeps. The pen clicked on the table. Dane leaned back. You'll run out of time without him. We'll run out of soul with you, I said. I offered my hand. Calder stared at it like a bridge that might hold. He took it. At 1632, he signed. At 1645, Margot signed the foundation charter. At 1658, attic funds landed. At 1712, we wired the balloon. We made it by 47 minutes and a woman named Greta who refuses to lose to clocks. The chronometer in my chest quieted for the first time in weeks. We still hadn't voted. The protector's hand hovered over the lever. We gathered again in teak and oil and lavender. The brass knight sat where my mother used to put her coffee. Vote? Mrs. Almeida asked, offering dessert. Yes, Margot said, steady voice. Yes, Leo said, eyes on the painting of the M.V. Privet. They looked at me. I felt blue ink under my skin, heard tick become breath, smelled teak and engine oil. In the summer, we were small enough to hide under this table and listen to grown-ups argue about things we thought were too big to break. Yes, I said. Unanimous, said Mrs. Almeida, and a knot I'd carried between my shoulders loosened like a sail catching the right wind. She read from a page in blue. Per the trust, Ava Holt, chair. Leo Holt, head of fleet operations. Margot Holt, executive director of the Seafarers Safety Foundation. She glanced at Calder. You may remain counsel if you remember which ship you're on. He nodded, a man trying on humility. Dane closed his folder, the line of his mouth unfamiliar with loosing. Enjoy your philanthropy. We'll see you at the next down cycle. Bring a blue pen, I said. It photographs better. He left. Mrs. Almeida wound the chronometer with the care of someone who always knew time is a tool if you oil it. The tick smoothed into something like surf. Your mother would have liked this, she said. I picked up the night and set it facing true north. We'll make her proud. The first ships to receive Atlas-guided retrofits left wakes shaped like math. Fuel use fell. Dwell time shrank. Deckhands sent unprompted photos of new safety gear, yellow slickers, brighter than old injustices. A postcard arrived from a captain's wife, a picture of her husband's hands, uncut for the first season in a decade. The back smelled like sunscreen and gratitude. Leo moved into fleet ops like the engines had been waiting. He stopped wearing sweaters you can't bleed in. He started eating lunch in the engine hall, where the air tastes like iron and honesty. Sometimes he sends recordings of cooling metal tick, and one line, "We're still us." Margot filled the foundation office with children's drawings of ships with smiling faces. She writes grant checks in blue, then comes to the boardroom to fight about procurement like a woman who found a new hunger. Calder and I postponed the wedding, then moved it to a smaller room and wrote vows that included no boats we don't mention and no pen that isn't blue. He still cleans his glasses when he's nervous. I still wake at 3 sometimes and count ticks until they loosen into quiet. Mrs. Almeida brings tea that tastes faintly of lavender and old blue ink. She keeps the night on her desk now. When I visit, she spins it with one finger to say, without saying, sideways, then forward. As for Dane, there's always another man with a better smile. He seeded rumors about covenant breaches. We answered with public dashboards that glowed green. He sent white lilies to our office on our first profitable quarter. I sent them to a hospital with a note in blue. For a room that needs calm more than I do. On the day the M.V. Privet completed her first voyage under the new plan cleaner, faster, paid up, we gathered on the pier. Teak smelled like sun. Ropes smelled like wet hemp and work. The chronometer ticked against my palm in my pocket like a small heart. I signed a maintenance order for a minor fix that would have been ignored before. Leo laughed. Paperwork on the pier? You're impossible. Anyone can make big moves in a boardroom, I said. The real company lives in the small. He nodded toward the horizon. Mom would have said the same. Then she'd make us scrub something. "Get a brush," I said. We scrubbed a rail that didn't need us. The teak glowed brighter anyway. Walking back up the gangway, the knight in my pocket felt heavier than brass, more like a promise with a handle. The blue ink on my fingers smudged faintly on the railing. Behind me, the ship's horn sounded, low and certain, like a man who finally learned when to be quiet. And the chronometer? It still ticks. But now it sounds less like a deadline and more like a metronome. The rhythm you keep so you don't rush the song. If there's a lesson that fits in a margin, it's this. You can refinance a fleet with math, but you save a legacy with conditions. The kind written in blue ink, enforced by a knight that only moves when you think in angles, and timed to a chronometer that reminds you, sideways, then forward, before the tide turns.